Welcome back to a very, very special episode of That Was Us.
Yeah.
I'm Mandy Moore.
I'm Chris Sullivan.
I'm Sterling Brown. You can put the K in there if you want to. It's all good.
I'll do it.
Always got to add the K.
Always got to add the K. We have it's a special episode because today we have a special guest. We're not going to be discussing any one particular episode of the show, but we are going to be talking to the creator of the show, Mr. Dan Fogelman.
The man, the myth, the legend.
The legend. Spoiler alert, we will discuss like all seasons to a certain extent. So if you haven't watched everything, you can come back to this episode when you have.
Listen at your discretion,
At
as
your
they
discretion.
say.
There you go.
Awesome.
So without further ado, let's get into it with Dan.
Let's get into it.
Are we ready to
We're rolling.
go? All right.
Great.
We're rolling. All right. So today, welcome back, everyone, to That Was Us. We're here with the lovely Amanda Lee Moore, my man Christopher Sullivan. I'm Sterling Brown, and we have a special guest today.
Very special.
Yes.
The creator and showrunner of This Is Us, Mr. Dan Fogelman. Give him a round of applause.
Stop, everyone stop.
Welcome, sir. Welcome. And listen,
Welcome.
we decided we're going to do just a special standalone episode. We're not going to talk about any one particular episode of the show, but just talk to Dan about his creative process, how this came to him, how he came to this business, and like what this sort of meant for him, this moment of creating this particular show. Dan, first of all, how you doing today,
I'm good.
buddy?
I'm good, Sterling. First of all, thank you for having us to your home. I've never been invited there before, and it's exactly how I pictured it.
I thought so.
Yeah, it's right. It's very right for you.
It's cozy.
You have baby pictures of Chris and I.
Yeah.
It's very sweet of you.
My grandmother's like a white woman.
Your grandma.
Yeah, but she liked white women. So she put this sugar on the fingers. It's good.
I'm good. I've got a runny nose, but I'm good otherwise.
Okay, we're glad to hear it. It's a little rainy out here in Southern California today, so I'm glad everybody made it here safe and sound.
Yes, indeed.
Does anybody want to ask the first question? I feel like I just start talking. But
I
like,
love when you start talking. You need to take the lead.
All right, I'll just say this. What was the inspiration for the show, Big Dog? How did it come to you?
I mean, it was originally. I mean, I've talked about it a little bit. It was originally a movie.
Right.
I was starting to write it as a film because I think I was in a bit of a transition point in my career, in my life. I was trying to figure out what I was going to do next, I think, a little bit.
Yeah.
And my mom had passed away a couple of years earlier, and I was debating having kids. All my friends were having kids. I'm 48 now, so back then I was like 38.
Yeah.
And
Were you 38 or
I
were
was
you 36?
I think I was 37.
Okay, you're 37.
When
You'll know why I asked that
when I
question.
started writing it.
Right,
when I
right.
started writing it, I was like 36.
Yeah.
And and I started writing a movie I started thinking about how my friends were all in such different places in their lives at the roundabout age I was, which at the time was 36, 37. Some of my friends were married with like grown children, like 10, 12, 13-year-old kids. And then I had myself, I was on the cusp of getting engaged to Kate. I had lost my mom. Other friends had lost all their parents. Other friends had had cancer. You know, I had a friend who passed away or was sick with cancer. So I was like, oh, wow, it's interesting that we could all be hypothetically the same age or literally born on the same day and be leading such different lives.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that was kind of the starting point. And then I thought to myself, oh, that's kind of a cool twist. What if you thought that was the story you were telling, but it was actually the story of a couple of multiple birth type children. At the time when I was writing the movie, there were about 7 or 8. It was octuplets or sextuplets or whatever that's called. So it was like kind of a Love Actually story, finding all these different people born on different days.
It sounds like the Wachowski sisters, that sci-fi thing they had on Netflix where they all sort of shared the same brain. Anyway.
Yeah, that was it. I had an English woman in the show. I thought one person moved to England and got an accent that would be hiding it.
Sure.
One character's black, one character's to otherwise white. So you would never see that they're all potentially related and grew up in the same home. And then like I got like 60, 70 pages in and it was not working. I was like, this doesn't work. It feels like it exists just to get to a surprise and that's the end. And I just kind of put it in a drawer, which I had not done before. And then that was the start.
Yeah.
And then I was doing other stuff. I had had a bad run of television experiences where shows I made were not quite cutting through. They were getting canceled.
But you were getting like first seasons usually. Weren't you
Yeah.
getting,
I
like,
had a
full
couple of
first season?
2-season shows. I was at a different studio.
Yeah.
They were just kind of like, I got screwed a couple of times on things. I had some big projects that weren't going. It was just like, it wasn't quite, I was kind of going, should I go back primarily to film? I wasn't quite sure.
Okay.
And then
Tell them about the films that you've made, big guy. Go ahead and flex on them for a
Yeah,
second.
get the resume
Well,
going.
we can, yeah, I mean, we can flex on
Good
it.
job. Crazy Stupid Love.
That's kind of it.
Little Danny Collins.
Yeah.
What's the Santa Claus joint? What's the
Fred Claus.
Fred Claus?
That's what I lead with. That's
The Santa Claus
what I lead
joint.
with.
Yeah.
That's the one that goes on the tombstone.
This is the second pairing of you and Miss Amanda Lee because we did a
Tangled
little
together.
Tangled
Tangled.
together,
I
right?
wrote Tangled, yeah.
You
Tell
wrote
them
Cars.
Tell them Pixar.
I wrote Cars.
You wrote
Life
Cars.
itself.
Life Itself, my big colossal failure.
Listen,
my
hold
favorite.
on.
Love.
Love that
let me
movie.
take a little.
Come on.
That movie, Dan.
Yeah.
I know this is gonna be.
Look him in the eye. Look him in the eye when he says
I
it.
don't
Take
let
it.
people
Don't
talk
make
it.
me cry. It changed my life.
Oh.
Rachel and I saw a screening of it at Paramount, and we both walked out of that theater different people. And it was,
nice.
I love.
No, I remember you
I
said
love
that.
that
was
movie.
really- me too.
Uncomfortable.
Yeah,
I love it.
I love that movie.
Well, yes, I wrote a lot of shit, and then what did I do? So it was in a drawer. I made a new deal at a television studio.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I wonder if that could be a TV series, something different. I'd primarily been doing half hours.
Yeah.
And I was like, I wonder if I could do something more in the line of like what I normally write with this, and maybe part of what was fucking me up. Can I curse on this?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
did. Go for it.
But maybe part of what was messing me up was that I had needed to get to an ending, and that was just the ending. Like that's kind of a fart. Like they're all related. That's the end of the movie. And I kind of knew that, and so I was like, oh, if it's a series, it just kind of turns the whole thing on its head at the end, and then you can make like a gazillion of them and follow these people. So I cut back the number of characters and focused on a family of three children in the family, and then I wrote it, and then it just kind of all took off from there.
I don't know anything about developing a TV show or writing a TV show, but you set yourself up for a high level of difficulty as far as storytelling goes.
Yep.
The number of twists and turns, the number of, we talked last week about the secrets that we had to
keep.
hold in order to, so
Yeah.
that the thing could unfold in front of people.
Yeah.
Maybe you can talk a little bit about the writer's room, because Sterling brought it up last night, the timelines that you guys would keep all of this stuff straight and to keep it moving in a direction that ended somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, it was a tremendous amount of work. It was
Spoilers, possibly. So just, we're talking about the whole show. There you go.
I don't think that I was conscious of it when I wrote the pilot, and like that became a bit of the narrative that like, holy shit, this guy has a whole grand plan of 6 seasons of a television show. I think that kind of started coming after I realized it was going to be a thing. Once we started shooting it and making it, I was like, oh, I better figure out what we're doing. So I had a lot of thoughts and like of the big picture shape of the show. It's going to end with the death of somebody. I don't wanna
told them already.
Okay, all right. But you just cut it out. But I kind of knew the big picture shape and the Jack stuff, and but no, I mean, then it just takes on a life of its own, and you start putting those timelines. I had all these incredible writers. The first couple of weeks of that writer's room was probably like the most exciting time in my career,
Really?
creatively. Yeah, it was like really like, it was just like a bunch of people. It was primarily young women in the room. Not young, like 10, but like 30-year-old women.
It's all fifth graders.
Yeah.
It was
What an opportunity.
fresh ideas.
I really wanted new
fresh
voices,
ideas. Yeah.
It was just really exciting. Everybody was like telling their primal origin stories, and we were working them into the show, and that's where the big picture of the show started really developing. And I'd go, oh, I like that. Oh, some person would tell a story of their life, and everybody would start crying. But oh yeah, let's do that. And so we kind of picked and chose, and then over the course of that year and the next year, really the timeline really developed. That
Were they all
rails.
seasoned TV people? Or I know
No. Not
Becca
Was a
was a
playwright.
playwright, or
Yeah.
it still is a playwright.
It was Jess and I, my producing partner. I was like, I really want to get great writers and people that aren't necessarily all just television
From the TV
writers.
world, yeah.
So yeah, I hired KJ, one of our writers. She was an established television writer, like well regarded, but I hired her off a play she had written.
Really?
Yeah, same with Becca. It was it was a hodgepodge of people from all different kind of walks of lives and experiences. And that kept, you'd lose writers as you go. People kind of leave and go off to do other things and you bring in news. But there was always kind of a wide like swath of people in that room. And it wasn't just like, the obvious thing to say would be like, oh, it was, whether it was diverse or whatnot. It was also just people had a lot of different life experiences there. There weren't a lot of people who like had the same, like, oh yeah, that's exactly like my childhood. It was a lot of different childhoods. And I think that was really kind of foundational as well.
I think as we've been discussing the show too and going back and rewatching it, we're just astounded by so many things. But something that's really struck me is just how fully realized the show is from the beginning. Did you know that like you didn't want to tell the story linearly, that you wanted to sort of play with time in that way and jump around?
That I knew.
Okay.
It's a weird one, like when people ask, because like I don't think there was such intensive planning. I mean, I think part of what you see when you watch the show as a whole, if you like the show, is like it was meticulous, and all the people who were writing on it, and then the people who were acting in it afterwards, and we took it so seriously. Like it was as if the world depended on us making sure that we got every connected piece of tissue to it. When it was really, and we very rarely let something slide. You know what I mean? It was like, and so there was like a meticulous like nature of like, is this working? Does this work? Does this all connect? That it almost became like obsessive for a group of 10 people who were writing the television show. And I think you feel that.
Yeah.
We talked about that last week, about how that attention to detail, in my opinion, made the audience
feel safe,
feel
right?
safe and considered. And that like, even though this is going to be hard, and there's going to be a lot of hard things that we talk about, that like the people creating the show are being that detailed and being that considered with these things.
I think what happened, honestly, in retrospect, I had a couple of big picture things I knew. I knew I wanted the show to be challenging, but like accessible in the way it played with time. I had always said to them, like, in the second episode, we're going to jump all the way back with Mandy and Milo, and you're not going to be seeing the same people that you're going to see them in crisis. You know what I mean?
Right.
Many years later.
Yeah.
And those little babies that are being born are going to be now 8-year-old kids. And that's like a big jump in network television. Like that was a big thing. And so I knew that kind of stuff. I think the show took such like that first year when the show took hold in like the zeitgeist. It was all the people working on it, and I'm like the writers particularly, but also I think even the actors. It's why everybody like enjoyed it so much, as opposed to sometimes when people miss the enjoyment. I think like nobody had experienced that level of insanity in this field. Like Mandy, you've experienced it, and Sterling was just coming off winning an Emmy, but like it was like the popular thing in television when you're just the show that everybody's like watching. And I think suddenly like we were like, oh shit, we better really figure this thing out.
Really hook for you, because you're a delightfully neurotic human being, and you sort of try to play it under. But like, when did it feel like, oh snap,
this is different?
We're gonna be around for a while.
I knew that. I mean, I'd been a part of really big things, right? Like I'd done animated Pixar Cars, right? And I'd done stuff like that had kind of broken through in different ways, whether it was Crazy Stupid Love or Tangled or. And I'd also been around big movie stars like Streisand and Pacino and all these guys. So I kind of like knew what it, but I knew what big things felt like a little bit. But like when I was watching it film, I was like, holy shit, this is gonna be something big. I just had a feeling. I never get that
from the pilot.
From filming the pilot.
Really?
Yeah. Like I was like, this is gonna be very good, and I think it might. And then we started to get all those bellwether signs, like the trailer busting out like that. I remember very vividly like they'd made a trailer before we got announced in upfronts, and I noticed I was screening it for people, and I've told the story a lot, but people were, I never thought that the show would be crying and that would be a narrative about the show.
Neither did I.
I never thought that. I actually thought it was funnier than it was like
Same.
Me too.
I agree.
We mentioned that a lot.
We talked about that
We
last
mentioned
week.
that a lot.
It's like,
doesn't get credit for the levity that it brings.
but people, the viewers latch on to that because it makes them feel so much.
Well, I think it's part of why they're able to like those who watch the show and enjoy that type of thing. They let go because like you're pounding them, but there's also laughter and lighter storylines within the heavier stuff and whatnot. So But yeah, I was screening it for people because we had a year or so. We filmed it so early. We had quite some time before, not a year, but not the normal amount of time from filming to pick up.
Sure.
And I would screen it for people, and people were having really severe reactions in a positive way. And I had a DVD of it, and I would like once in a while, like my buddies, my buddies would be over like my house in the Hollywood Hills and my old bachelor pad that Kate was making me move out of.
You're like breathing on it and wiping it on your shirt.
They would come over, and they would come over to watch football. And then I would like, I remember once vividly, my buddy Josh and Alex, who subsequently passed away, but they came over to watch football. I was like, hey, do you guys want to see that thing I was working on for NBC? And it ended, and my buddy Josh, we just finished watching like 8 hours of football and drinking like unbelievable amounts of like whiskey and bourbon and stuff.
Yeah.
And like, but Josh, like Alex, it was just like dead quiet. And then Josh got up and he excused himself and went outside, and he was like really like they were like emotional. And I was like, this is odd. And I just kept noticing that. I thought people were going to be like, holy shit, that's a great twist, and feel something, but then with the emotion. And so then the trailer came out, and people were having that reaction just to the materials and the actors without knowing anything.
That's what I mean.
It.
Like it was what was it? 70 million views?
Yeah, it was nuts. Yeah. I went to New York for the upfronts, and Jennifer Salke, who is the president, is now the president of Amazon, but was the president of NBC at the time. Right. She called me, and I was in a taxi in New York going to the upfronts, and she said, have you heard what's happening with the trailer? And I was like, what? And truth be told, I thought the trailer was like, I had nothing to do with the trailer. I'd been very involved in the naming of the show and how it would be marketing. I had strong opinions. And I thought the trailer was good. You know?
Fine.
I thought it, and I was like, she was like, do you see what's going on with the trailer? And I was like, no. And she's like, it's going berserk. Yeah. And I was like, oh. And so we had all of those signs. And then you could just tell, like, the night we launched. I mean, I was telling Sterling didn't remember it, but like, everything, like Sterling won the Emmy for Darden on either Sunday or Monday night. The Emmys were, and we aired the following Tuesday, like one or two days later. You were at that Mexican restaurant with us, like live tweeting the premiere a day or 2 days after you won the Emmy.
Oh damn!
I believe.
Come on, you had the Emmy there.
Yeah, you're passing it around.
Showing it to everybody.
99. If it wasn't 1 or 2 days later, it was the week after. But it was so there was just a lot of shit that was lining up, and then it aired, and the numbers were really big, and then it just kept growing upon itself. And I remember going to Thanksgiving to go see my family, and it was around the time the 8th episode was airing, and Milo was doing the push-ups with Lonnie on his back. Yeah, and I remember on the plane. It was one of those visuals of every TV on the plane. Felt like it was on the show. And then I got there and people were in the hotel. It was right as like it was getting towards like information about Jack. It was the most we were ever in the zeitgeist, right in that period. Yeah. And like, I remember it was on in the hotel I was checking into somehow. Faintly, or maybe at one day, the next week at the hotel, because I was staying there for a week, and like people at the desk were looking up at and I was like, oh wow, this is like quite a thing.
So crazy.
Yeah, it was like I just remember around that first 7 episodes of the show, I was like, it took a month or two, and I was like, wow, man, I can't even mention that I work on the show without people like going, oh yeah, like even if they weren't watching it, just everybody knew about it at that moment.
It was one of the few things where people, and I don't know how this happened. Maybe you can speak to like that timing, that people were watching it in real time. Like it's like one of the last shows.
Yep.
Sure.
Game of Thrones.
Yep.
And us, where people were like, oh, Sunday night. Oh, Tuesday night.
Appointment television.
It's going to happen. Like, why? What is it about the time in which it came out into the world, do you think, that allowed it to sort of latch on the way that it did?
I really don't know. They used to ask me that all the time, and they would always refer it to Trump and the political environment of the world. And I just like I honestly, I think I don't know. I always pointed at you guys in the cast.
I spoke to the divisiveness of the world, and it is something that seemed to we could all agree that we love our family.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that was something that for like an hour, you're like, oh, it felt unifying in a very divisive world.
I think that's a good way. I always thought that was a way of saying it, was like that, you know, people that you could be red in the face screaming at because they're so opposite who you are as a person. Like if you saw that person just like when their husband or when they were having a baby or when they were at a parent's funeral. Like it's we're all kind of in the same, you wouldn't hate the person in that moment.
Yeah.
And so maybe there's something unifying about these family shows that once in a while a show comes along at the right time and just catches people.
Yeah.
And maybe the time was right for it. I think it was the cast was just so appealing. And I think I don't know, I think the mystery of the first season, I always felt like there was a lot that always confused me because I always thought Parenthood was such a great show.
Yeah.
And Friday Night Lights, a lot of stuff Jason Katims had done in this space. And there was a lot of concern that the show would be small, and we don't want it to feel like those shows, which hadn't, like, in their mind's eyes, it wasn't one particular person, but like had felt small for some reason that I didn't quite understand. But I did always think that like the mystery of the patriarch's death would give people some red meat to go along with a family dramedy that like you're pulling people through something with the story as they're also really caring about the characters and the other arcs and the marriages and the adoption stories and the romances. But like, I think that did have a part of pulling us into the zeitgeist as well. Because that's when it started. Like Chrissy pulled out that urn in like the fifth five. And that was like a moment where like, and it was also like just the Miguel showing up at the end of 2, which I knew after the pilot, we needed a big twist at the end of 2 and say, oh, she married, what happened to the dad? Yeah. And then when she pulls out the urn and says he's dead, and you know, oh, I'm living in a time frame with 2 time frames with kids. At what point will he die? Right. Yeah. And that gave it, I think, a propeller.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes it feel like the kind of in-your-face nature of mortality, right, pulls the audience towards something that they inherently, we all know it's coming,
right?
But now it's in your face.
Sure. And
it also kind of, in a way, says to the audience, we will take care of you, but anything goes here.
Yeah.
Like 5 episodes in, we're going to kill one of your favorite characters.
Yeah. And you're not going to know why for a very long time.
Yeah. And so it like propels people's interest in what's going to happen, which is life too, the anticipation of what's next.
I think that's right. I mean, I think that helped. I think it was like a little magic trick we had inside of those first couple of seasons of the show, which was like, and why there was an urgency. Game of Thrones had urgency to see it in real time because someone was going to die.
Yeah.
Right? At its best, when Sex and the City was one of those shows, primarily for like a different audience, it was like, who is she going to wind up
still
with?
Part of that
there's
audience,
a question, right? Like, there's a question.
That's our next rewatch part.
Yeah.
You guys are doing Sex and the City. That's gonna go nuts.
More That Was Us after these words from our sponsors. All right, I have been so excited to partner with Quince here for the podcast. The weather is getting warmer, and so it's time to say goodbye to all my jackets and light sweaters, mostly light sweaters here in California, and say hello to shorts and tees, what we do best out here in Cali. I wanted to update my wardrobe for the long haul, and what I do most seasons is I try to get the classics, without spending a fortune.
Luckily, we found Quince. Now you've got a lineup of timeless pieces that keep you looking amazing year after year.
They've got so much great stuff. Premium European linen dresses, blouses and shorts from $30, washable silk tops, timeless 14-karat gold jewelry, and so much more. The best part? All Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
By partnering directly with top factories, Quince cuts out the cost of the middleman and passes the savings on to us. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. We love that.
Now I've got a lineup of timeless pieces, comfy t-shirts, nice comfy pants and shorts that keep me looking effortlessly chic year after year. I am one fashionable dad. And the best part about all Quince items is that they are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. They partner directly with top factories, and that's how they cut out the cost of the middleman, and they pass that savings on to us. I also found out that they do home goods. I'm talking rugs, linens, towels, curtains, silverware, flatware. And so Rachel and I have been building for like 3 or 4 years now a guest house. It is the never-ending project, but we're going to cap it off with Quince Home Goods. They are so lovely. We're going to use their rugs, we're going to use their towels, their linens. We're going to go full out Quince in the backyard.
Get warm weather ready with Quince. Go to quince.com/TWU for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/TWU to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/TWU. I am always trying to do right by my body. So when it comes to my hair and scalp health, finding a product that actually works and is made with clean ingredients always seems like a bit of a trade-off. But with Vegamore, I get products that are made with clean ingredients and give me visibly healthy hair. With Vegamore, I'm able to have visibly thicker, fuller, shinier, longer hair, all without the harsh ingredients. And every cute pink bottle of Vegamore products are 100% cruelty-free and are never formulated with potentially harmful chemicals like parabens or hormones. I absolutely love their shampoo and conditioner, and I cannot wait to try their value kit, like the Grow Essentials kit, where you get to try even more than one amazing product at a great savings. When you sign up for a monthly subscription, you save more, you never run low on products that you need to take care of your hair. The key is consistency in your routine for the most beautiful, healthy-looking hair. Fun fact, Vegamore sells 1 bottle of Grow Serum every 15 seconds on their website. That's how good this stuff is. Give your hair the power of the little pink bottle with Vegamore. For a limited time, That Was Us listeners get 20% off their first order by going to vegamore.com/TWU and use the code TWU at checkout. That's VEGAMOUR.com/TWU. Code TWU to save 20% on your first order. VEGAMOUR.com/TWU. Code TWU.
I want to talk to you a little bit about your writing process, because I think you approach things a little bit different than a lot of writers I know. Like you seem to just put pen to paper and start writing.
Yeah.
Like you don't outline things beforehand. You're like, it's easy if I just write it and show it to people, you know? Because that's what you did with the pod. It's like, I wrote this thing, I want you to take a look at it. Not like, oh, I have a sketch of an idea of a thing that I want to get. Talk to me about why. Is that just easier for you? Has that always been your process?
Yeah, I mean, part of it's just I'm untrained and lazy a little sometimes. But
This guy.
but it's true. But yeah, I mean, so it's 2 parts. One is like on a business level, like years ago, I stopped. I said I'm going to no longer sell pitch ideas,
Okay.
or pitch a sketch of an idea, because what happens is somebody will want to make it, and then I will write it, but I have lost control of it already, right? Like if they have notes, if they want to make it with a certain actor or a certain director, I am not in control of it. It started at a younger point in my career when I didn't have as much of the control as I have now, where I'm less worried about that now, because I know even if I was to tell someone an idea, they were saying, we're going to pay you to go write it, I'd feel confident I could control it a little.
Okay.
When I was younger, I just watched things go astray a bunch of times on me. Not in a bad way. I always was lucky enough to work with nice people, but like I was not the person in control. And sometimes they worked out. Like John and Glenn directed our pilot. Yeah. I wanted to direct Crazy Stupid Love when I wrote Crazy Stupid Love, or I had that in my mind's eye, but I had never directed. These guys got it. They were they made it what it is. You know what it is. And sometimes it works. More often than that, it didn't. You know. And so, but so yeah, at a certain point earlier in my career with film and TV, I was like, I'm going to write stuff, give people the script, and say, this is what I want. I want Mandy to be in it. And if you don't like that, that's fine, but I'll find somebody else who wants to do it that way, or I won't do anything. So that's like the business side of it. I just stopped doing that.
Baller move, okay. Dig.
And I always recommend that to young writers, but it comes from a place of like a little bit of privilege and a little bit of like you have to trust on betting yourself, because if you spend a year writing something that you don't get paid by, the end of the rainbow might be nobody wants it.
Sure.
And you've wasted a year, and sometimes it's better to get, have a career and you have a family and get paid to write something, even if it's going to go in the shitter, and then you have to do the next thing. So it's a balancing act. But then as a writer, I never have really outlined for myself very much, which is not good.
It's worked out okay for you.
But I wind up doing it in television series, even at the best. Like, as an example, like when we get to like the Memphis episode of the first season of the show, like I wrote that episode, but that was outlined. Like I was so busy at the time. I was writing so much during that first season. I was given by the writer's room an outline of a story, like beat by beat. Now I kind of dodge and weave through that. In television series, you wind up outlining quite a lot. That's the whole thing, breaking the story, because you're doing it with the room.
Right.
But when I'm kind of writing television series at the start, you and I are doing a new one. Like the first couple, I just write them.
Yeah. And
then I start figuring out as it gets deeper. So I don't do a lot of outlining.
Here's my next question, because you'll come up with things, and I think the writers' room, they'll call them like Dan storms or something like that, where something doesn't seem to like make
so douchey.
Something.
It's a hashtag.
Something doesn't seem to make sense. So I'm gonna reference the painting, and I remember Dan was telling me, it's like, so Kevin does this thing where he paints before he like does it. He's like, it's hard to explain, but like it'll all make sense and it'll be great. And I'll be like, all right, bro, whatever you say. Like, I'm like, painting, Kevin paints? Like, I remember the first time he said it to me, I was like, okay. And then you watch it and you're like, it's so sort of like it seems like it's gonna go left, but in your mind, you have such assuredness about like, no, I know, I'm gonna land. It's like, where does that come from?
The painting, that was a big breakthrough moment though for the show, where I was like, we were in that again, and that's that same episode where I believe Chrissy pulls out the urn. And so that was where like the show was hitting the zeitgeist. I was like, okay, like we need to, I was like, I want to say what the show's about. I think that was, there were a couple, I wrote, any showrunner writes a majority of their show, right? There can be a gazillion. That first year, I did a lot of writing, right? And then at a certain point, though, after the first, I don't remember if I wrote the first 3 or 4, but then at a certain point, you start turning over scripts to other writers, and that's where you really start having to figure out, like, what is this thing? I'm not writing everything word for word anymore, and I remember, like, we were struggling on that part of the script, and I was like, this is where. So I don't know where the confidence comes from. I was like, I had this idea of like, I want Kevin, the character who's not the one with the verbal skills to speak to the big grand philosophy of the show, to secretly have something inside of him. And I want him to try and express it to a little kid. And I started pitching it to the writers, and it just kind of came out, and they all like were looking at me blankly. And I was like, no, it's gonna work. Not all, but I was like, we'll do that. And
then you made them all watch you paint for like 3 hours. You're like,
I don't know why with this show particularly, and when I'm doing stuff that's good, hopefully on our new show that we're doing, Sterling, but like I can kind of see it in my head. I can see the scene.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of have to fill in the words a little bit. Yeah. And then sometimes I can't get that, and then that's when things are not working. I was like, I want him to say, this is us for the first time in a surprising way. Like not all together, but like he says, I think this right here is us. Yeah. Right. I don't know, I just saw it. I could just see it, and then I wrote it. Like, and sometimes I can't.
It's a balancing act that the show not only walks immediately, but continues through 6 seasons. And I've talked to a lot of people about this. Yeah. Walking right up to the line of like heartfelt sincerity without tipping over into a saccharine or to overly sweet. It's you give something like that, and it's not. It is the writing, but it's also who, like you said, who you give it to. You give it to Kevin. Yeah. And the way Justin delivers things, it's just incredible.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a balancing act, and it's like in every moment, that's all I would monitor. And again, this show tipped from the very beginning. There's a segment of the television watching population that the show tipped too far into that sentimentality from the very beginning. It's just not for them. It's not where they live. And so it's like kind of like the people who more have our radar, right, which I find to be in the middle, is like, where's it tipping past that thing? Like, would it have been too much?
A challenge, like being that sincere.
Yeah.
There's a place for sentimentality if you're actively engaged in relationship, if you're actively engaged with challenging yourself. And the show, I think the show for a lot of people was like pushing them to go there within themselves, within their relationships, within their own families. And even there, we talked about it, even certain people who loved the show couldn't continue because it was tugging at things that
for
were
one
too,
reason or another.
too difficult.
It's family. I mean, family is the thing. It's not the emotion. If the show had been about golfers, but had the same degree of like emotionality and done it the same way, people wouldn't have had that pullback. It's family is tough. It's like people have lost, older people our age, a lot of them have lost a parent or two. Younger people, it's a lot to think about all this big stuff. You know, people harbor ill towards their parents, harbor love towards their parents, vice versa. It's like a lot.
It's confrontational.
So,
to be presented with it and have it mirrored back to you. Maybe a little too close.
Because it's interesting because the emotionality of the show, which has always mystified me, like the conversation around the crying. Like it's just so around us with, I mean, I have a 4-year-old now. He's taking once in a while in his little Spider-Man backpack, he'll take a little car toy home from school.
Okay.
And Kate noticed it. And she sat him down and she said, my wife, and she said, dude, you can't, that's not good. And on Monday, you're going to take the car back and you're going to tell the teacher you're sorry. And, you know, and you'll tell, but that's kind of, I know you don't mean to, but that's kind of not good. That's stealing. Coincidentally, it happened to be a day. This would be so, and This Is Us if we were still making the TV show. And so, wait, why are you laughing? I'm going to get in trouble for telling you.
No, continue.
So the other day, it was a rare morning where we both were taking him to school. Normally it's one of us. We had to actually go volunteer for something at school. For whatever reason, we're both in the car. And as we're walking up, Ben's like very quiet and he's got his little backpack on. And I'm like, hey, Kate, it's taking a while to get out of the car. Kate was getting out of the car. And she's like, he's really amped about this apology. He's nervous. And it's like, I don't know which teacher he's going to say it to. And we don't know what's going to happen. And we're walking into school and there's a teacher, this very sweet young woman, Katie, who coincidentally has a kid in the class. Okay. She goes, good morning, Ben. And he just turns to Kate. We were not ready for it. He goes, now. He wants the toy, right? He wants his backpack and he wants the toy. Give it to me now. And so she goes, oh, okay. And he decided it was going to be Katie, the first teacher he saw. And she gives him it. And in a very loud adult voice, he said, I stole this car from school on Friday. I want to tell you that it will never happen again. And I'm very sorry, Teacher Katie. I'm very sorry. I promise it will never happen again. Kate starts crying. The teacher starts crying. The teacher's crying because he was just like so kind of brave and just owning it. And no one had heard him use his voice. He's kind of a shy kid. And everyone, I wasn't crying, but like people were like crying. And I was like, everything's fucking emotional. This is Us was more emotional than that. They're crying over him returning a stolen Lightning McQueen toy. Yeah. You know, I don't know. That's my take on.
I was laughing. I'm laughing because I think I was legitimately surprised when people keep coming up to us and saying, like, you guys make me cry all the time, da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, I guess that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm sorry. Thank you. You're welcome. Because it comes from Dan, who has such a defined sense of humor, right? And like Dan doesn't lead with his emotionality. Right? He sort of leads with his intelligence and his humor and whatnot. And so the fact that the show kind of became known for this thing that it elicits from you, I'm curious for you because like I've seen Dan cry twice.
Really?
Like I think he cries the least out of everybody.
Oh, for sure.
Out of all of us. Like we will all be like, everyone's like when Dan had us up to the place when it was in our final season.
Oh yeah.
And he gave us a really sweet gift. I was like, oh, Cheeks is crying. He's like, do you remember this?
Yes.
The sweetest thing in the world. And so I'm curious.
Can you stop a podcast midway through?
You know what? I changed my mind. I don't want to do this.
For you, like, is there, to write the show, did it ask you to tap into a vulnerability that you don't typically share?
But I think I do. I mean, I think your assessment is correct. But like, I think like, I do actually sometimes get my eyes tear up when I was writing this stuff.
Yeah.
Because that's probably my first time doing it. Like, I remember feeling it a few times.
I remember you saying that to us.
Yeah.
You'd message us on the group text and be like, guys, this episode.
Yeah, once in a while it would get me. And like, so, yeah, I mean, I think, my dad's not a crier at all. I don't think I've ever seen him cry. And but after the pilot aired, when we were in the Mexican restaurant doing the live tweeting for the premiere, I remember very vividly.
The Mexican, right? That's all he said.
But it was right. It was a Mexican
I think
restaurant.
it was a sports bar.
Literally, it was on Melrose, right?
Yeah, it was on Melrose.
They had a taco on the menu, and now it's a Mexican restaurant.
It was a
I
Mexican
thought it was a
restaurant.
sports bar, guys.
It did have a sports bar feel, but
because there were a ton of TVs everywhere.
There were a lot of TVs.
Yeah,
but it was called El Cholo or El
something. Yeah. I remember Sterling had his Emmy, right? And he was waving it around.
I'm telling you, it was a Mexican themed
The wings are
sport bar.
dangerous to move around. You got to keep it contained.
Anyway, we'll cut this out. My dad called after the pilot ended, and he was hysterical.
Whoa!
He was really crying, and he was like, and my dad's normal routine in my career. It's a funny routine. My dad gets one paper to this day. He lives in Florida now, and he gets the New York Post. And anytime I would have a movie opening up or anything, he would call me and be like, "Well, you got another shitty review in the Post."
Thanks, Dad.
Dad, I'm gonna send you a different newspaper.
It's not like you receive at the premiere of Cars. It was the biggest, and I mean technically the biggest premiere of all time. It was at a racetrack. It was the most people to ever attend a movie premiere. It was my first movie, and I flew my mom and dad out, and they were divorced. It was, I think, their first time seeing each other, plus their significant others. We were sitting with Paul Newman. They both fell asleep during the movie. So my point.
They're not the demo.
My point being. My dad, they are not people who just like shower you with platitudes, right? And so my dad, though, he called, he was crying. And I remember I was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And he's like, "We have a bunch of people over to watch the new show." And he's like that. And he kept going. He was like, through tears on the phone, he would be so embarrassed about this story. You can cut this part. But he would say, he was saying, "You're a good person. You're a good person," through his blubbering. And I always felt that more than emotion or things, I felt like people felt decency coming from the television show and from the cast. And I genuinely feel like through the writing and then through the cast, it felt like good people were making something, I think. And because to a person, like the cast is filled with good people.
Very good.
And it's like, and so I always felt that like the show never checked quite the cool box, like not that, but it did, and that irritated people because it would win the awards, and we were at all the shows.
To be on a network TV show, and we were all sitting at the Golden Globes,
and you guys were winning the SAG multiple times, thing as a cast, but like it was an interesting thing that like we were able to thread that needle, and I think it speaks to what people like want. I don't know. I thought more than emotional, it was like, people can recoil against decency. Most of your leading cool shows are anti-heroes, right? I always thought like in a weird way, and I loved Succession, but I thought like Succession is the mirror to This Is Us.
Absolutely.
It is about three siblings, right? Vying for their, four siblings, but vying for their father's,
shout out to Alan Ruck,
right? Their
attention,
father's attention to be
adoration.
The primary person in a family. It's about parents and children. It's about generations, even though they're not going back and forth in time. I mean, there was a lot of connection, but the shows could not be obviously more different. And that's not to say bad people made the other one, but there was something in the water on this one. I don't know.
Well, again, it's confrontational. Decency is difficult.
Yeah.
Like to just write your brother off, or to just not make the phone call to your dad.
To not find your biological father.
To not find is
confront your mother about choices she made. Like, I mean, it's an endless list.
Yeah.
We'll be right back with more That Was Us.
Every year, we all pledge to save more and spend less. But how are you supposed to save when you're paying inflated prices for everyday essentials like gas and groceries?
You can't just cut those purchases out of your budget. But now, thanks to a 2024 money-back hack, you can get cash back from them with Upside.
Upside is an incredible app for anyone who buys gas, groceries, or dines out. With Upside, I get cash back on every purchase. It's my secret weapon for staying on track with my savings goals. This morning, I used Upside for the first time. I went and filled up my car, the Pearson family Wagoneer, and I got 65 cents off per gallon. It was incredible. I just found the nearest gas station, found the nearest rebate that they offered, paid for the gas the way I normally do. I let the app know that I bought there, claim my money, and my cash back goes right to my app.
To get started, download the free Upside app. Use the promo code TWU and get an extra 25 cents back for every gallon on your first tank of gas.
Next, claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside. Then pay as usual with a credit or debit card, follow the steps in the app, and get paid.
And yeah, some credit cards or loyalty programs do this, but you get 3 times more cash back with Upside. Plus, even better, Upside will not sell your personal information to third parties. This is big. This is a huge deal because they know that your information is a vital part of the trusted relationship that you are going to have with Upside. Upside users are earning hundreds of dollars a year. That's probably why they have a 4.8-star rating on the App Store. Check that out.
Download the free Upside app and use promo code TWU to get an extra 25 cents back for every gallon on your first tank of gas. That's an extra 25 cents back for every gallon on your first tank of gas using promo code TWU.
After years of fine print contracts and getting ripped off by overpriced wireless providers, if we've learned anything, it's that there's always a catch.
So when I heard that for a limited time, all Mint Mobile wireless plans are $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, I thought, okay, what's the catch? But after talking to them, it all made sense.
There isn't one. Mint Mobile's secret sauce is that they sell wireless service online. They don't have retail stores or salespeople. Instead, they deliver premium phone plans directly to you.
They also bring you the emotional support hotline directly to you. We have Mint Mobile. They give us unlimited minutes, then we get to connect with our fans as much as we want to.
Now, why is it important to save on a mobile plan? That's like asking, why is it important to save money, period? Because it doesn't grow on trees. The more money in your pocket, the more things you can do for your life, for your family, for yourself. Don't throw your money away.
So you got an overpriced wireless plan? Your monthly bill's freaking you out? Got unexpected overages because you didn't read the fine print? Well, now you can say bye-bye. Mint Mobile to the rescue with premium wireless plans for $15 a month.
All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number, along with all of your existing contacts.
Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's limited time deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month.
To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/TWU. That's mintmobile.com/TWU.
Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/TWU. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabyte on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
What was the most challenging episode or time in the show's history for you?
That's a good question,
I have a thought on that. I want you to hear your response.
The beginning. We could think about obviously all 6 seasons.
On a workload level, the first season and into the second was so hard because it was just all new, but it was also so exciting, but it was also so crazy.
How often did you feel overwhelmed? I remember having conversations with you where you're like in it. But like, did you ever feel like I can't do this, or did you feel like I just have to figure out how to keep?
No, it took a toll. Like, I mean, it was just like it was so much. During that first season, I also had a second TV show that was going, and I was prepping a movie that I was going to direct during the hiatus. Yep. Like, I was editing the Memphis episode and everything else from New York, where we were already done shooting. I was prepping a movie, so it was just like a lot for me personally. Show-wise, like the first season was like, everyone was like, "Are you enjoying it? It's so successful," and I was not enjoying any of it. I was just like keeping my head on straight and trying to survive. Yeah. And it wasn't that I wasn't wasn't enjoying it, but it was just like, I mean, we had so many things. Like you guys had them throughout, but I mean, I don't do press. I don't do like events where and we
had a lot of that.
It
stuff.
was like nonstop, and I was like, you're not present for any of it. You're nauseous the whole time. I remember standing with Mandy at the first one, which was at that Barker Airline hangar thing.
Yeah.
It was like the Critics' Choice Award. It was our first award show. And I remember Chris Casper's our publicity guy coming up to me and being like, "Hey, I just want to give you the layout of the stage. If you win, you'll be the one going up and speaking. I want to show you the path." And I was like, "What's going on? If we win," he's like, "Dan, you might win. Do you have a?" And I was like, "No, I don't. I've never been to one. I mean, it was my first time in a tuxedo since my prom. You know what I mean? Like, and like so.
Same tuxedo.
Same tuxedo.
He would come up to me and be like, "Sterling, if we win, you get up and you say something because you can do this stuff." I'm like, you need to say something, man.
So the first season was challenging in that regard. I think the third season was really challenging in terms of being like, that's our first season where like we have to now keep this thing rolling with more storylines. We're inventing now.
You jumped to Vietnam.
And marital crises with, I believe, you guys and like you guys.
We'd also gotten a 3-season pickup season 3.
After 3.
After 3. Okay, gotcha.
But 3 was the first time, like, what I had in my head, in my soul, was like the first 2 seasons of the show and the last season of the show.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like I could have done this as a 3-season show, but I always knew 6 that it could bear to live longer.
Yeah.
We appreciate
that. As a piece of commerce, it needed to last longer.
The audience appreciates it.
But,
we all thank you.
But so that was the first year of going, okay, how do we invent?
Sure.
Where are we going to go? We're going to go to Mandy and Mila younger in their courtship. We're going to go to Vietnam. We're going to go do stuff. We're going to start fucking up Toby and Kate and Randall and Beth and like do all that stuff because we're going to give Justin a new love interest. Like that was the first time we were off like the core mission of the show, and now like making really cool stories, but that were going to last for multiple seasons until we could get to my ending.
Was there one particular episode though that you just like found so hard for whatever reason? Maybe it was like it was so emotional, or it was just like a tough nut to crack. Like
I remember the first episode of the third season was hard. It was when you and Milo go to a carnival and like and I was just going and so that
like our first date.
Our first date. It was just like a new timeline. I was like, is this big enough? We did the big Franco Harris thing with that premiere episode.
He's in our new show. The guy who plays Franco Harris is in our new show.
Holy shit, I knew I recognized him.
You didn't realize, bro.
That's Raphael. Oh, shit. I gotta tell him. Anyway,
it's like a fever dream, right?
Yeah. So that was a challenging one. I just remember going like, is this? I mean, the first episodes. I mean, we had the pilot, the first episode of season 2, the first episode of season 1, the first episode of season 2 ended with like the reveal of you screaming in the car and showing the burned down house as you like bang on the steering wheel, and the audience went batshit, right?
Yes.
And I was like, oh, season 3, I don't
know what
have
that's going to be.
I don't quite have that thing because you can only,
Sure.
And so I was like, so that was a challenge. The premiere of season 5, when we decided to attack.
That's the one that I was going to talk about.
Yeah, that was very, very stressful and hard. Like when we were going to attack, and I hear that more from the other crowd. They're like, I get a lot of that. Like, I liked your show, but then you guys went woke, they say, which is like code word for whatever it is. I don't know. But like, I'm like, really? Like, it was such an artful, I thought, touch. But like, anyway, like.
Agreed.
So I remember talking to you in the midst of the pandemic and Black Lives Matter. The ultimate decision for you to incorporate it into the show was based on what? Like, because some shows were trying to like make alternate realities, and you decided like, no, this is the world we live.
We were the first show back on television, basically, based off the way we were going to go. We were still the biggest show on commercial network television. So it felt like a really big choice. We were like literally writing the episodes when people were still, like millions of people were dying, and we were washing down vegetables outside of our house with like Lysol. Like that's when we had to make the decision. And it just like, I think I've been reading a lot now with kind of the immediacy of COVID in the distance, with the immediacy of COVID now years behind us, like how much that period like really screwed up this world in this country psychologically in ways that we don't think about anymore, but that it did. So when we were having those conversations and making those decisions, like it was just so raw. I couldn't fathom how we were going to put that onto television 2 months later and not address it. Yeah. And I also thought, and the deciding factor for me, because there was a lot of debate in our writers' room, and the deciding factor for me was that we could talk about George Floyd, but we could also own the pandemic in a way that other shows couldn't, because it was very specifically a family pandemic, right? Yeah. Like the results of the pandemic and the results of the racial reckoning that the country was having at that moment in time were particularly unique for us in our show, right?
Yes.
We had a Black kid growing up in a white family. So like, are you kidding? But we're not going to talk about the world events right now. Like in a show that has to go 6 seasons, like I could make Beth and Randall fight again, or we could talk about something.
The reality of the world that we're living in.
Because we were going to get into talking about Randall reckoning with his racial background as it related to the family anyway. Yeah. So like, why not make it thing? Sure. And then in terms of the masking or the pandemic, which we tried to treat artfully, but like we're like, that was where you were having kids around the same time, Mandy and Sully. Like my dad didn't see our kid for a year because it was just too fraught to travel and whatnot. Yeah. Like I was having a baby during the midst of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. I was not at doctor appointments with my wife. I was like Sully was during that. I was in the car in the parking lot listening to the doctor through FaceTime, often losing reception. Kate had to get induced a couple of weeks early. There was nothing wrong, but some things were starting to go astray and everything wound up fine. And I remember hearing the doctor telling her, but I was making out every other word in the parking lot and couldn't understand what was being said. So that was like our experience of having a baby. And I was like, how unique it is. Like if we were doing a cop show, or not even a cop show, if we were doing a show about home renovations, maybe it wouldn't have made as much sense to do it. But like it felt like it was so that was a big challenging moment for us.
That was going on social, which you have to like do at your own caution, right? There were so many people who were delightfully effusive for the way in which we tackled that 501 premiere. Yeah. And as many people were like, if I wanted to watch the news, I would turn to the news. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But the thing is, nobody was like indifferent. Like, oh, that was okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was like.
Yeah. Very divisive.
Yeah.
Well, it was also a really powerful episode at a really kind of crisis point moment for the country. And so, I think that was definitely the only time we were very polarizing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think, which I thought was cool. Mm-hmm. The other hard part was just the ending, I think, the last 2 or 3 episodes, like just getting that. It wasn't hard. It was just like, I was like, you get in your own world where you're like, I'm doing the most important thing in the world. I'm ending This Is Us, right? Like, and you're like, so you really want to get it right. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so that was like that last season. Yeah. I was losing a lot of my senior level writers who I relied on. Were starting to, as you do, are starting to get pulled in a lot of different directions because they're preparing for their life beyond the show. Not that they weren't there. Sure. And I found myself just like with a very kind of, it felt like reverting back to the first season a little bit, and that final season as a whole of like I'm kind of here. I want to do this right. I still have them up. My son asked me the other day why they're up. I had 18 little, the little sticky notes. What are they called? Stick-em.
Post-its.
But you know how they're the small ones? Mm-hmm. I had 18 in 3 rows of 6 on my wall in my home office because that's where I was mainly doing work from because of COVID stuff still at that time. And each time I would complete an edit, I would cross it off. And because I was like, I was just like treating it like the last mile of a marathon. Sure. And I was like, I'm going to end the show right so that I can feel it was done right and I feel proud of it. And I was like, but it's going to kill me. And I was just like so anxious about the 17th episode and are the reveals all going to work and is the train all going to work? And then like the 18th episode and the home footage. And when I was done, that was a huge moment of like relief. Sure. That was probably, when you ask what the hardest one is, probably ending it was the hardest. Not because I was like emotional and crying, but more because I was like, I really felt like, I was like, God, this has been, it's really been 8 years of my life. Yeah. And thousands of people work on the show and then so many people watch it. I'm like, I have to try and get this right. So. Yeah.
You did some things.
You did.
Like the scenes that we had shot, I don't know if I had shot a scene with Randall and William that you put in that final episode, or was it in 17? Yeah. And I was like, I forgot I had shot this thing.
Sure.
And I feel like we all had like a couple of those, like, because you'd been saying like we would get on the call sheet, there'd be like, season 6, whatever. And you're like, what are we shooting? And then you shoot it. And then like the fact that you had foresight to do that, man, that's pretty impressive.
It was the beginning of season 3 or 4.
It was 3.
Yeah.
That we shot and banked a bunch of what was eventually shown in the final
Because you wanted
episode.
the kids.
The main reason was the kids.
Sure.
I didn't want the kids. In retrospect, if you could have like told me like do it all over again, I would have taken another beat at the very beginning of season 1 when everybody was so little and shot like unending amount of footage. Right. I would have taken like 2-3 weeks before we started production, because then you would have had that magic trick to go to all the time in the final season. Because even we get older, you know what I mean? Like you can feel like everybody just like maturing, and it was like cool to get it early. But we did that at the top of season 3.
That's how you keep Walt on the island, man.
Yeah.
That's how you keep Walt on the island.
Early.
Yeah.
Get footage.
Yeah.
Just real quick, do you want to talk at all about the title? Because when we
first
read
point.
the pilot, we had like the Untitled Dan Fogelman Project, and then the working title was sort of 36. How did you wind up coming with the This Is Us?
Well, the original title was 36, and I just actually, some friend who's an author asked for a family member, like a signed original pilot script, and my assistant just gave me the original pilot script, and I signed it, and it says 36 on it, and he was like, "What the fuck is this?" And so
I want this.
I can't.
Can't sell this.
I had done. You'll see in my office. It's a big joke, but all my early spec script movies, like Crazy Stupid Love, and a couple others, I had never named them because I was just like, I hate titles, and so.
They're all called 36.
So I was like at the last minute, I was like, so all over town when you're shooting, you would see UDF signs that mean Untitled Dan Fogelman. Yeah. And I was like so tired of it. I was like, I'm just going to throw a title. Because then once you do that, you'll never land on a title. Because if you don't have a title to start, you'll never have a title. No one will ever agree on it. I put together, I'll send it to you guys if you want for the podcast. I play it for people. I'll play it for you guys after we're done here because I save it also. I put together the most cocksure, like, promo that was so brazen, and I was like, you've seen it? Like, I was like, God, I was the cockiest. I should have been kicked out of a window. I put together a promo to try and sell them on This Is Us, and it's like throughout the years, NBC has brought you some of the finest television in the world, and it's like it would say this is comedy, and it had clips from Seinfeld and all of their shows, and then it was like this is drama, and it was like The West Wing and all their best shows, and then I was like, coming this fall, a new show to add to the pantheon of classic, and it said like this is love, this is laughter, it was all the stuff that came back.
It's great.
But I was putting the show on a stage with all these other shows, and I was like, we hadn't even aired yet. I mean, when I was sending them this stuff, I mean, it was like.
But that's genius marketing.
When I made my first cut of the pilot, I put that big paragraph at the beginning that explains how people are born in the same time. Yeah. And that writing didn't have the words "This Is Us" in it initially. Yeah. So I rewrote it slightly so that font could kind of shrink down into the "This Is Us." And I was like, then when it's attached to the pilot and the pilot is playing well and they ask the audiences questions after the show, it will work.
The writing of the show, besides the title is one thing, but like people come up to me constantly. You will always reference us as actors, but like they come to the actors and be like, dude, the writing on that show is
exceptional.
Insane. You know? So take a bow, bro.
Thanks, man.
You're welcome.
No, seriously, if you could take a bow, that's how we end.
It's part of the podcast.
Yeah, okay. That was us. Before you guys go, what can you tell us about the new show that you're working on? Plug your new show a little bit if you can.
We don't even know the name of it.
We don't know the name of it. Sterling's in it. It's good. It's very different.
It's a Secret Service agent on presidential detail. We can say, it loses the president.
And a retired ex-president.
Yeah, retired ex-president and whatnot. And so he's sort of trying to figure out how he died, why he died, what was the motivation behind it. It's an ensemble. Wonderful actors. We can't say too much. Dan always has some sort of.
It's kind of like a political thriller, with a murder mystery, but there's like a lot of secrets behind, like the murder and like what's gone on to get them there. So it's like.
And when it is findable, it will be found on
Hulu.
Only 8 episodes. So I think this is like the 8 episodes, 3 seasons. So like what he would have done to This Is Us is what he's doing with this.
It's so much easier.
So much easier. Like, not 18.
My golf game's better. It's great.
A lot of the same directors. A lot of the same
John
crew.
And Glenn are directing our pilot. So we have
a lot of the crew too.
Cool.
Amazing.
The crew is really one of the best feelings for me being on set is sort of being surrounded by people that you've known for 8 years.
Yeah.
You know, Tim Sound, like Cricky's there. It is, Shawnee's there, Coy is there. Like all of our crew from the show.
Everyone's back together. I love that.
We shoot on 31 and 32.
Amazing.
Which are the sets that we
pretty
shot.
Trippy. Susan came down the other day and was like watching Sterling doing it. And it was like all on the same stage. She was like, this is a trip. Like, this is it was like really weird. Yeah.
Well, Dan, thanks for coming to talk to us, and hopefully, if maybe down the line,
anytime you need me, I'm here.
We would love to have you back to talk about the show.
I will come to Sterling's living room anytime you guys.
I love that it's mine.
It's yours.
It's nobody else's.
Please subscribe, call up your family and friends, have them check out this show, and we can go through the show again together.
Yeah.
Rate, review, subscribe.
That was us.
That was us. Thank you, Dan Fogelman.
Thank you, Dan Fogelman. This was so fun.
This was a treat.
That Was Us is filmed at The Crow and produced by Rabbit Grin Productions and Sarah Wareheim. Music by Taylor Goldsmith and Griffin Goldsmith.